Hello and welcome to my video lecture on how static web pages are processed. This slide is a simple graphical representation of what's going on when a static web page is processed. So a static web page is a web page that remains the same, remains as it is, unless a web developer makes changes to it. So every time that a web browser requests from the web server an HTML file, that HTML file, every single time you ask for it, will show up the same exact way until a web developer of some kind goes back and edits the file on the web server. So a web browser, in my case I'm going to be using Chrome, so I'm going to use a web browser to make a web request to the web server by typing an address into my URL, a URL into my address bar. And then there's going to be an HTTP response that is sent back to my web browser that is then read and reconfigured so that it displays properly in my web browser. So you make a simple HTTP request. For instance, I can type this address into my address bar, so this URL, so it's going to be www.example.com, and this is the information that we get. We get example domain, so that this is used for a lot of testing and stuff like that. So this is a fairly generic page that's just going to come back. So what just happened is we sent this request. This request is a GET, and we'll get into that later. So we're asking this web server for information. It's going to go to example.com, as it did. It's essentially going to get the index page. Now, the index page could be an HTML, HTML, PHP, whatever. We may not actually see that in the address bar, and that's fine. But that's actually what happened. And then this is the file that gets returned to my browser. My browser is going to read through this, and then it's going to only display, it's going to use these HTML tags, which again you should have learned in IT30. It's going to translate these tags into a pretty visual representation. So obviously this isn't the actual web page that gets displayed. This is the web page that gets displayed. So we get example domain, we get a little message here, and then we also have a link that we can click on for more information. And if you click on more information, it brings you to the IANA, the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, which again is just these example domains and maintains them for us to use whenever we want them. This is also a fairly static web page. Again, this web page is not going to change unless a web developer goes in and makes changes to that. So how does this all work? There are basically two protocols that are used. We've got the hypertext markup language, the hypertext transfer protocol, which is going to help do the responses for the HTML, so that the HTTP handles that. And then in order for files to be exchanged between your browser and the web server, we're going to make use of the transmission control protocol, internet protocols, which is really the combination of these two is really a suite of protocols. And the TCP IP is what actually allows two computers, in this case the client and the server, to communicate to each other. And then the hypertext transfer protocol is how our web browser is going to make requests for HTML files. And that is the end of my video lecture on how static web pages are processed.